Yeah, so I guess just to kick it off, definitely an exciting time. You know, our draft has been moved back a couple times, and now that we have sort of a locked in, hopefully a locked in date here of November 18, definitely with a month to go or a little less than a month to go, there's definitely some excitement. We've been able to get into gyms and see prospects and have some sort of, proof of life since it's been so long since these guys have actually played in 5-on-5 games. And we're excited. We're going to be really aggressive, and we're looking to add some talent to our young core.
All right, going to start off with a question from Blake Murphy from The Athletic.
Hey, Patrick, how are you?
Doing great, doing great. How are you?
Good, thank you. You mentioned this kind of extra time that you've had, and when you guys go through the decision process and you're looking at all the different things you look at, have you felt a change in maybe how you personally are weighing, an in-person scouting session versus video versus interviews compared to years past?
Oh, absolutely. It's this is something like we've never seen before. There's never been a moment, since I've been working in the NBA where you're scouting for a draft and the following season has already started in different parts of the world. So it's very strange. You know, there's some international prospects that were actually watching the beginning of their season, but yet they're in this year's draft. So it's I think each player kind of has their own story. We have a dossier and like let's say like a history with each guy that we're very serious about. So I think we look at each player through a different lens. It's his own sort of journey, his own path, and you're watching his evolution and his trajectory differently than you would anybody else. But yeah, it's very unique. It's different. Some guys you're relying more on video. Some guys you can get up close and personal with them, and obviously you'd love to do that. But yeah, it's a completely different year and different ballgame.
Just to follow up on your point about international guys having started up already, when you guys look at potential, and I know there are a lot of reasons to potentially draft and stash a guy, but when you guys are having those conversations this year, how much has it come up that, that developmental runway for the next 12 months or 10 months or whatever might look different for those guys than it would normally for, say, a G League guy with the uncertainty around the G League this year? Has that kind of shifted any thinking or the way you guys are kind of long-term planning out what these prospects might look like?
That's a really, really good question. You know, when we first started out sort of making lists and figuring out, who we were zeroing in on, we talked about that, especially when you start talking about second round picks. Definitely somebody has an advantage developing if they're currently in a season right now versus the guy that's waiting for a draft that's been pushed a couple months back, that's literally looking at his phone to figure out when the start of the next season is going to start in the NBA. So definitely all those things are being taken into consideration. But at the end of the day, Masai, Bobby, we like to really stay focused on the talent, and we don't try to get sidetracked by a guy's great situation versus his talent. Like if we have to go through a rough patch, if a guy has to, sit on the sideline for 4 months because he doesn't know where the G League is and he's just going to practice in the NBA, if a guy is going to be playing for a EuroLeague team, we take all those things into consideration based on his scenario and how he fits with us. And, if all things being equal, we're going to go with the talent.
Cool. Thank you so much, Patrick. Good luck with the rest of the process.
Thank you.
Next question is going to go to Michael Grange from Sportsnet.
Hi, Patrick. How are you?
Hey, Michael. How you doing?
Sorry about my backlighting here. So I guess, just as your title suggests, I mean, your air miles total's got to be pretty peak most of the time. But I'm just wondering what you missed out on from, borders being closed down in that March area till now. And, that, because that time in a typical year from say March to June, what have you missed out on, or have you? have you been able to compensate, and you think you're going to get just as much intelligence as you would have if the situation weren't what it is?
Interestingly, as it pertains to myself, my schedule, fortuitously, I spent the entire month of January and half of February out of the U.S. So it seems like right when the sort of the basketball world or the world shut down, per se, I just had a fresh look at all those targets, all those prospects. So I wouldn't say I feel like I'm sort of missing anything. You do sort of miss the opportunity to sort of have some of these casual bump-ins with agents or people in a player's circle. That sort of thing, I don't know if we can figure out how much of that we've lost as of yet. Once the draft comes and we start to see guys fall or start to see, another thing is it's really tough to get a consensus. Guys in my business, we don't really look at mock drafts, but there's generally like a pack of people that you're constantly around, and you talk about prospects, it's natural, and you can start to get a feeling of where guys are going to go just based on sort of the crowd. And not having that has been different. You kind of know, let's say, who the 40 players are, but you really have no idea what the order is. And I think that kind of dovetails into strategy. If there's someone that you really like, it's very difficult to put together a strategy to go get him because you have no idea where he's going. So yeah. But I don't. Back to your question, I don't think we've missed a ton. The season ended just before the NCAA tournament. Internationals, we missed maybe Hoop Summit. That's a nice look where they're outside of their club's sort of background and you see them just by themselves in a new setting in the United States. But aside from that, I wouldn't say we've missed much. And in terms of being able to dig on intel, we've had months and months and months. And in some ways you got to be careful because, you don't want to be one of those study long, study wrong, where you get so much information and it's like a 17, 18-year-old kid and you're just putting too much into every little factoid that you can find out about a guy. So yeah, you got to balance that a little bit.
And just as a follow-up, you mentioned off the top, you've been able to get in some gyms. It looks like you're at BioSteel Center now.
Yeah.
I don't know if is that a fake
No,
background?
no. That's the background. That's the
okay.
background.
All right.
Yeah.
So
I'm at a gym, but I'm not at BioSteel.
Okay. So I mean, I presume you're in the U.S. and traversing through the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
So and there's no restrictions down there. You can kind of go where you need to be.
Well, actually, there actually have been some unique restrictions. New York put a couple restrictions on flights into New York, where you have to quarantine for 14 days, and if you drive in, you're supposed to quarantine for 3 days. I mean, I'm not going to New York, but I've heard some people talking about that. So there are some sort of unique things with a couple prospects that are in some different states. But for the most part, most of the agencies are based on the West Coast. So a lot of prospects are between, let's say, Vegas and Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. Right. A small little pocket of guys in Phoenix, small little pocket of guys in San Francisco. But a lot of the agencies, as it's gotten closer to the draft, they brought their prospects out together to kind of go through the normal pre-draft process together. So that's been fortuitous for us because, most of that stuff is a short drive for me.
So the agents are hosting NBA people like yourself, and you can watch the work there. Is there any competitive basketball going on at all? Like, is there any?
There is. The prospects aren't playing in that competitive basketball, but guys that missed the bubble, guys that were eliminated from the bubble early, they're back on the ground. Los Angeles is sort of like a summer training hub. I don't know if you can call this a summer, but in the last maybe 3 weeks, there have been a lot of NBA players on the ground. I've gone into gyms and seen our guys, OG, Norm, Pascal. They're back playing, they're back working out. And there's definitely some energy about, when the season is going to start. And every now and again, you'll have, a prospect jump into one of these runs. Right. And, we're not supposed to be in the gyms when prospects are playing in these games, but it's such that a lot of these guys, they end up playing in pickup games, and you might have to excuse yourself from a gym, but there are guys that are just floating around.
Not right away though.
What's that?
Not right away though.
No.
Wait, excuse me.
Right
After the third game.
We're right out of there immediately.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah.
Going to go next to Chris O'Leary from Raptors.com.
Hey, Patrick. It's kind of a random question, I think, but just seeing other leagues go through drafts through this pandemic, whether it's the NFL, the NHL, et cetera, have you been able to kind of take anything from maybe what they've done? I don't know if MLSE teams have shared information in that sense, but just ways to sort of get through this, things that can kind of help you guys in terms of dealing with the differences that are there this year?
Absolutely. Bobby has talked to, the teams in our locale and has done some sharing to try to figure out, what can kind of gain us a competitive advantage, especially with dealing with, things that have to do with the border. But I think that's more draft day type stuff, and we're still not there yet. We're exploring with a virtual war room sort of like platform that they're working through now. I haven't seen any of that stuff, but we got a really creative group. Masai always wants to be on the cutting edge, and he's putting Jen and Rovin and all these guys to work on making it cool. No matter what we do, we're going to try to make it cutting edge and cool and fun for the fans, and hopefully it can be memorable for everybody.
All right. And just to go in a bit of a different direction, you guys have obviously had a lot of success over the last few years with your draft picks and undrafted free agents and things like that. What do you think you guys as an organization are maybe seeing differently than you did in the past, or than what other teams are seeing right now?
I would say, now we have, as a club, let's say a little bit of an identity and stability. And I always say this, back in the day, whenever San Antonio was sort of this gold standard of drafting guys that can fit their system, I think, having a really creative coach like Nick Nurse and knowing what Nick values in a player, it then makes it easier whenever you're sort of deciding between players who fits us. And I think in the last few years, it's been a little bit easier when you're looking at, talent versus talent, and you're like, man, both of these guys are really, really talented. You can kind of rely on fit a little more than you have in the past, because what style of basketball we're going to play, what brand of basketball we're going to play, and sort of how Nick can manipulate a guy's skills to get the most out of him. So I think with that's been a little bit of a competitive advantage.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
All right, Patrick, we're going to do two more questions for you. First one goes to Mike Ganter from the Toronto Sun.
Hey, Patrick, how you doing?
Great. How about yourself?
Good, thank you. I'm curious about your level of confidence, given all of the craziness and the changes this year. Has it changed any? Like, would your level of confidence about your upcoming pick be any less this year because of this, or is it just everybody's in the same boat and we like our chances given that playing field?
I think if we were picking in a different range, that would be a little bit different. I think where we are, late first, there are going to be some guys that we really, really like that everybody else really likes. And there are going to be some guys that we like that maybe, beauty's a little bit in the eye of the beholder. And, we're in a position right now, unless we, do something to move up in the draft, where, whoever we like is going to sort of fall to us. And, I think if we were picking in a different range, it could be a little different. But also with this amount of time, we're really confident that, like, we've studied these guys. Most of the guys that we really like, multiple people in our office have watched every single game they've played. I mean, we're literally, this draft is like, 16 months, 17 months in. So the amount of information we have is more, I would say, more than any other draft. But, again, like I was telling Michael, you got to be careful with that a little bit. These kids evolve and they change, and this pandemic has affected people in a lot of different ways. And I think you need to be careful when you're judging young men going through a pandemic. some may have gym access, some may not. Some may have an agent that has resources to do X, Y, and Z, some may not. So you need to sort of balance that sort of stuff and figure out, who will thrive in your environment and stick to the talent.
Got it. Appreciate that. Thanks, Patrick.
And final question is going to go to Doug Smith from the Toronto Star.
Hey, Patrick, how are you today? Thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Hey, Doug, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I was just wondering, you talked about the agent run workouts and they bring their people in. How much different is that than team run, and how do you sort of negotiate around? You don't get your hands on these guys, they do.
You're exactly right. That's a great question. When we have a guy in our building, obviously they're on our turf. They put on our practice uniform. They go through our paces. Our assistant coaches, our minor league development coaches work them out. Our head coach and assistant coaches, they're sitting courtside. There's a different level of, let's say, intensity in the gym when you're doing a workout in your own facility. One-on-0 workouts, they're hard for a different reason. You don't have somebody else to sort of pace yourself with. If you start the workout and you start missing a bunch of shots, you're out there all alone, and you could be out there drowning. But when you have a group workout, you can sort of bounce off other guys' energy. A couple other guys might be missing shots or making shots. You can draw off their energy. And then the competition element, you have other guys that you're competing against. 1-on-0, you're right. It's a unique thing. You're just focusing more on skill set, conditioning, and their level of preparation for that moment. But in terms of competitive nature, who's going to push through a drill, who's going to outcompete somebody else, yeah, those are things you're just not going to have a chance to see, and you're going to have to rely more on your past scouting and your in-game scouting that you've done throughout the year. The good thing is we're pretty aggressive, and we don't regionalize our scouting. We have some people that see some people more than others just because of the nature of schedules. But Masai is big on everybody comparing apples to apples, and every guy in our office has seen every guy. So when we get in a room and we start debating a player, it's never a situation where I've seen a guy 20 times and someone else has seen him, none.
Yeah.
It's a situation where if we're going to have a spirited debate about a guy, you've seen him 10 times, I've seen him 15 times, and we can agree to disagree, but we're comparing apples to apples.
And just one follow-up, if I may. I know we'll probably never go through this again. Hopefully we never go through this again.
Yeah, hopefully.
But what would you tell the league about the limitations it's put on teams and how that sort of hampered your ability to judge talent, number of people you can have in the gym, number of places you can go? What hasn't worked from that regard, do you think?
I would say, we're still learning about the virus, and I would say the stuff that they've done has been very cautious and I think smart. It's very difficult to govern many gyms, this many agencies, and I think to lean sort of on caution, you're always going to have some people that sort of push the envelope a little bit. I think if you just opened it up and said it was a free-for-all, that would not be a great idea. So I actually commend the league on figuring out sort of a happy medium. And when you actually go through the process and you pick your 10 players and you go through what you're going to do, really, this is just a last look. It's just a piece of information on a file that should be much, much bigger. And I don't think we should overreact to, not being able to go into every single gym with, every single player in the gym and everybody competing against each other in that gym. I think, we have 30 games of footage of a guy, in some cases, a couple of years of footage of a guy. We've been tracking these guys for years. I just think them being on the caution side, the safer side, has probably been a smarter move.
Does the circumstances, you guys have had so much success with sort of upperclassmen in the draft over the years, does the nature of this whole situation maybe favor guys who have 2 or 3 years of college experience or versus more unproven prospects?
I would say generally just, canvassing the league, I would say, yes, you have more information about that player in competitive environments, and you have a bigger sort of dossier on what this person's work ethic is. You know, have they been knocked down before and have they got up again, versus a younger prospect. But again, you know, we're a pretty aggressive group, and if we see an opportunity to take a very young prospect that maybe doesn't have the same level of experience, but we believe he's a talent that can change the course of our franchise, we're going to swing. I mean, we're not going to sort of sit on the sidelines and take an upperclassman just because it's safe. But yeah, I would say, to answer your question, upperclassmen might have a little bit of an advantage just because you have a bigger file of them playing in competitive games.
Appreciate it, Patrick. Good luck with everything. Take care.
Hey, thank you, Michael. Good to see you, man.
You too, buddy.